This week on the TT show, big news is coming out of Gamescom. NVIDIA DLSS 3.5 and Half-Life 2 RTX have been announced. Samsung's world first dual 4K gaming monitor. Linus Tech Tips has responded with a new video promoting accountability. And brand new GPUs have been announced from AMD. Let's get into it. Hello, welcome to the very first episode of the TT show. My name is Jak Connor. I'm a hardware editor over at Tweaktown, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Kosta Andriotis, gaming hardware editor at Tweaktown, and we're here to talk about all the news of the week.
Yes, we're going to be going over each of the biggest stories of every week following, because this will be a weekly show. We're going to be touching on all of the stories that are found on tweaktown.com, and if you're following along on the video side, we're going to be pulling up the links and diving into each of the stories. Also, all of the stories that we do talk about, and if we do touch on product reviews or anything else that is important, they will all be in the description below. And I think we're going to start this week off with some Gamescom.
Yeah, it's been a massive week for tech and gaming. Gamescom is the largest gaming event in the world. It takes place in Cologne, Germany every year. Hundreds of thousands of people. And this year, in addition to all the games and stuff, NVIDIA and AMD were on hand to show their latest gaming-focused technologies. And first out of the gate was NVIDIA with DLSS 3.5.
3.5
is just, it's just a number, but basically it takes all of their AI goodness, their deep learning stuff, to improve ray-traced image quality for all GeForce GPUs. And basically it makes ray tracing in games that support it, like it's coming to Cyberpunk, look better than running the same ray tracing effect with DLSS off. So it will look better than native. So it's one of those crazy magical things that they do.
Wow. Okay. So do we have a release date on this new tech, or is this out now, or?
Well, basically it's coming in September, October. The first titles that are officially going to use it are Cyberpunk, Portal with RTX, and a few others. But the SDK is already out, and there's already people out there using the DLL files to put it into games that support DLSS to see the effects, and yeah, it's already looking really good.
Wow.
How it works is super complicated. Well, I mean, it's technical as you'd expect, but it's basically called ray reconstruction. All it means is that it uses, so when like you turn on ray tracing in a game, it calculates light rays bouncing across an environment to generate things like reflections and shadows that are all ray traced to make things look realistic and better than, I guess, more realistic than what we're used to in games. But ray reconstruction basically uses AI trained on insane amounts of ray tracing data to fill in all the gaps. So whenever you do ray tracing in a game, or even in a movie, let's say, or any sort of like application when you're like rendering or you're doing a scene in 3D, basically what happens is, you have X amount of rays that bounce around, but then there's all this data that has to be filled in. That it's called a denoiser, where it looks at all the pixels and it approximates like how everything else should fit into the overall image quality, and that's how it's been done forever. And so basically switching it to the new AI-based method actually improves the image quality of ray tracing. It makes the reflections look cleaner and sharper. It makes all the lighting effects look a bit more pronounced and detailed. It's actually pretty impressive, like the fact that it like actually makes RT look better. So like Cyberpunk already looked amazing with the RT overdrive mode and even the ray tracing ultra settings, and now it's going to look even better.
Yeah. No, I'm just looking at some of the images in the article here, and obviously this is NVIDIA's announcement images, so we got to take these with a grain of salt. But it does look significantly improved, especially on the outer edges of where the ray is hitting. So if it hits the surface, and it's not something that I noticed before when I had ray tracing on, but I'm guessing this is just a bit of like razzle dazzle. This is a bit of I don't know. I don't think it's going to completely change the way that the game looks. I think it's just going to be like, it's a nice quality of life thing.
Yeah, but it's something that will, because it's like, obviously it's DLSS, so it's exclusive to GeForce hardware. It's not an RTX 40 series only bit of technology like frame generation,
which is nice.
So it'll work on 20 series. So like it'll work on like a 2060, for example, you know, which is a fairly old card now, and you can pick one up pretty cheap. But I think it will kind of like lead into like, you know, how RT is used in games going forward. Yeah,
it'll become a part of like the standard.
Yeah, that's right. Like it'll become a part of like the standard DLSS that, you know, if DLSS is available in a game with ray tracing, and 99% of the time that's the case, because you need sort of like upscaling or a technology like DLSS to improve performance, because ray tracing is still like a massive hit on hardware.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what GPU you're running it, like it's going to halve your performance if you turn on ray tracing. Usually, like, you know, if it's like a whole bunch of effects, like, you know, reflections, shadows, and you turn like RT tick 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 tick, you know, your performance is going to take a massive hit. So you need DLSS. So I think this being a part of like DLSS going forward will make RT look better, and
it looks more refined from what I'm looking at here. I think that's a good way to I suppose
exactly.
In a nutshell, it's like where the light is reflecting, instead of it having, like you were saying, the noise. If you're a camera person, as I am, a comparison would be when you've cranked your ISO up heaps, which is letting in all of the light into the lens and hitting the sensor, and then it creates like a staticky, noisy effect across the image, or in the locations of the image where there is an extreme amount of light, do you really notice where there is a lot of noise? And what this tech is doing is just refining, preventing it, or just refining it down to almost indistinguishable.
That's basically what it's doing. Yeah, it's like a denoiser, but like an AI based one that just works a lot better than previous denoisers. And you know, if it's being used for, you know, NVIDIA calls it ray reconstruction, it could probably be used in other applications too.
No, it is. It's a nice feature, I reckon. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, it's very good.
It's going to debut in Alan Wake 2 as well. So Remedy, who developed Control, like back in the day, like when the 2080 Ti launched, Control was like one of their first like major games that showcased what ray tracing can do.
Yeah, I remember it. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, it still looks amazing now, like with ray tracing.
Isn't that the game where you're, sorry to stop you, but is that the game where you're like picking up, like you're like throwing like objects around, and then it would, I remember because I was benchmarking the graphics cards during the 20 series launch. Pardon me. And we were just picking up objects and just throwing them against the wall and just watching all the like the particles just go on this, and then the light would hit them, and then it would all like refract and bend, and we're like, oh my god, this is ridiculous.
That's right. You could turn on RT on like particle effects. So it was like there was a tick for like, you know, you can have like general RT shadows and reflections, but then you could actually have RT on particle effects. So because that game, that's right, like you're just picking up and throwing shit everywhere. Just such a cool game. It's still amazing. And so so that studio's Alan Wake 2 is coming out in October, and that's going to have full RT. They showcased a new trailer and some images, and it looks amazing. And it's going to support DLSS 3.5.
Awesome. That is very exciting. Is there any other games besides Cyberpunk, Alan Wake 2 that we can expect DLSS 3.5 to be adopted?
I think it might be like We'll see it. I think because NVIDIA says that it's for games that have heavy RT,
Okay.
which are like games like Cyberpunk and like Alan Wake 2, where it's not just like RT shadows and that's it. Like, when Call of Duty had ray tracing, it was just like RT shadows, and it's like
It was boring.
You can sort of notice it, but like if you have a side by side comparison.
Yeah, well, that game doesn't look fantastic anyway. So
I can see what it's doing, but when it's like a full suite of effects, when it's like global illumination, shadows, reflections, emissive lighting, when it's a whole bunch of like 5 different things that it's doing, then it's going to be. So I think any title that does that, it will support 3.5. I don't like it's kind of like a niche thing because there aren't going to be that many titles that go all out with ray tracing. But I think we'll see it kind of like, games like Dying Light 2 or Metro Exodus, like games that heaps of ray tracing that have done a lot. Will have patches that'll just update the DLL, the DLSS in it to include the new ray reconstruction.
So it's the games that are really supported by NVIDIA, like the Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider has always been very NVIDIA.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, NVIDIA is their hardware is still ahead of the game when it comes to ray tracing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that is something to look forward to if you're running you said 40 series card, right? No, it's not 40 series. It's RTX cards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Love that. All right, should we move on to another Gamescom, or do you want to flex into Samsung?
I think we just do one more of the Gamescom for
Yep.
NVIDIA out, which is Half-Life 2 RTX.
Ah, yes.
They showed a trailer, they showed some screenshots. It's real. It's a full remaster of the game with basically full path traced lighting, brand new models, brand new textures, and it's all being done by a team of modders who have formed a new studio with full support from NVIDIA, and it uses the RTX Remix platform that NVIDIA developed, which basically is a Omniverse tool, or I don't even understand how it really works, but basically it's like this program where you load in an old DirectX 8.9 or whatever game into it, and it'll be able to render the game, and then you can like quite easily just add ray tracing. You'll be able to change textures. You'll be able to use AI to enhance elements and add DLSS and all sorts of fancy things. When they announced RTX Remix, they showed Morrowind, which is Bethesda's one of the biggest, most modded games of all time, and just showed them like turning on full path trace lighting in the game. And NVIDIA internally used it to develop Portal with RTX. So
this is a remaster tool. You could just load games and remaster them in.
That's right. Yeah.
RTX.
That's right. It hasn't officially been released yet. So version 1.0 or whatever that is for RTX Remix, but there are versions of it, and NVIDIA is working with the team working on Half-Life 2, their RTX Remix project. And they showed some screenshots,
I'm looking at them.
RTX off and on, and it's night and day. There's some shots where it's they've changed all the models are changed.
Look at the shadows. I'm just looking at your article here, where it's like the RTX off, and then compared to the RTX on, it's like you've got beautiful shadows, lighting bouncing off the floor. There's more depth to which is from the shadows. But just looking at if you're just an audio listener, you should pull up the article here, because these images really demonstrate what we're trying to talk about. The illumination from the big, I don't even know what that is, but big yellow tube, orange tube there. You can see it bouncing off the pole behind it.
Exactly. Yeah, and you can see the new model. So whatever that machinery is on the left there is a completely new model.
Yeah.
So it's fully rounded, and the materials on it, you can see different types of metals.
You got shadows on the little nipple shaped thing at the end. Yeah, no, this is awesome tech. This is I can imagine them running games like the old classic titles. I don't know how far we can go back in the Doom series with RTX, but it would be interesting to see like Doom 2 or something like that with RTX on. Or
there was like a Doom 1 with RTX remix. I think somebody did it. It's actually really cool. So this will be like basically any classic PC game. Like if they can get like, well, let's say they can get like the Quake engine or the Quake 2 engine or the Quake 3 engine, like those sort of like classic id Tech engines. Like back in the day, every first-person shooter or every major game used like id Tech, like, used the Quake engine. Like as soon as like Quake 2 came out, basically every FPS for the next year or two was running on the Quake 2 engine, or like or even like the original Unreal engine and things like that. If they can just plot into, because I think they used early versions of DirectX. I don't know, or basically old PC games. Like if you can chuck it in and to RTX remix and and even quickly add things like ray tracing or use AI to enhance textures, it's a pretty amazing tool.
Yeah,
this is a big project though.
Yeah,
because they're redoing all the assets and textures and things like that.
Yeah, wow. And this won't, is this just, it might be a bit of a silly question, but this won't be something that gamers can just download and then put their own titles in?
Oh, RTX Remix?
Yeah. Or is this just, like, NVIDIA is going to be selecting the titles?
It'll be like a tool that anybody can use.
Oh, okay.
So RTX Remix, the team here, like, it's in early access. I think you have to, I'm not sure how you get a version of it, but basically it's like an early access version. So it's obviously, you'd kind of need to know technically how it works to be able to get the best use out of it. But once RTX Remix is 1.0 or whatever, it'll be just basically freely available for people to download.
That is awesome. It's going to breathe life back into classic titles, which I'm sure will, like a lot of kids now that are growing up, like 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, I imagine they struggle to go back and play the golden age PC games purely because of how they look. Like, they're just on face value, they're like, oh, this looks garbage. Like, how, like, dad, mum, how did you ever play this game? And then, but that back then, when like that game came out and everyone was playing it and we were enjoying it, was the cream of the crop for graphics. Yeah. So if you have RTX Remix available, you can put, like, I don't know, Sly Raccoon or like a Jak and Kosta title. I don't know if those games would even work with this, but they're just examples of games that I played when I was really young. And then just give them a fresh coat of paint of graphics. So I think this kind of technology will breathe life back into classical titles, and then through that graphical improvement will lead to more gamers going back and playing those games.
Definitely. I mean, Half-Life 2 was released in 2004, I think, or 5.
Yeah.
Or something. So it's like it's going to have its 20th anniversary in a couple of years, which is crazy to think about. But which is why, like, the RTX off and on screenshots here just look so dramatically different. Is that, like, it's exactly right. It's like somebody coming, if it's the same game, but it just looks this good, then somebody will come into it and be like, well, this is a classic. Because they won't be sitting going, oh, that looks old.
Yeah, and they won't be burdened by the way that it looks. So especially if you're the type of gamer that can't get past graphics. Like, I'm a RuneScape player, so graphics don't, like, if the game is good, I don't care really how it looks. But I might be a little bit of an outlier, or at least I suspect, because a lot of gamers will take one look at a game and then they will just immediately dismiss it if it looks terrible. Even though that the gameplay itself might be buttery, the story might be like incredible, but it might look like shit.
I mean, I don't mind like classic games. I mean, I love retro gaming.
Yeah.
like emulating old consoles and old hardware is a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a special place in my heart for games that are really, really old but still play well, like the first Age of Empires or Age of Mythology, or what was that? Sorry.
Original StarCraft.
Yes, the original. Yeah, all of those games. Imagine that with RTX. All the little
Craft and stuff like that.
Oh, it'd be incredible. Should we flex on to the next topic?
Mm-hmm. Samsung.
All right. So last week, and this kind of coincides with the Gamescom announcement. Samsung announced the world's first dual 4K gaming monitor. They flew me out to Sydney to an event with some other press members from Australia to experience this absurd monitor. It is Samsung's Odyssey Neo G95NC, and as I said before, the world's first dual 4K gaming monitor. And probably the easiest way for me to explain that is they took two 4K displays, put it into one form factor. So it is 8K, which is a resolution of 7,680 by 2160. So nothing can run this at the moment. Sorry. Just what was that? Sorry.
4090.
Yeah, like 40 FPS
with DLSS. This is where you need DLSS.
Yeah, you do. Just to rattle off some specs here. So this is a 57-inch display, has 1,000 R curvature. So it is bonkers curved. Has quantum matrix technology for improved brightness and contrast, is 240 hertz. 8K at 240 hertz. Has a 1 millisecond response time. Its connectivity, it's outfitted with everything that you would need to even support 8K. So you got DisplayPort 2.1, HDMI 2.1, and multiple other input sources. So
240.
What'd you say? Sorry.
What game? Like 240 hertz is 240 frames per second, right? If you, it's like a 1-to-1. So at that resolution, what game will run at 240 FPS?
I don't know that's what I asked them when I was there. I'm like, what hardware do you have in there? Guess what GPU that they had in the computer?
What?
They had a 7900 XT in there.
Oh, just an XT, not even an XTX.
No, it was an XT. And I'm like, isn't that limited by the port? Like, does it?
That's got DisplayPort 2.1 though.
Okay, it does?
XT, yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah.
What game were they running? What game did you get to play on?
So this is where we get into some issues. So I sat down. We walked into the event, and they had two of every monitor. So they had two of the G9. What is it? G95NC. They had two of those, and every display besides one, which we'll talk about later, was running Ubisoft titles, Far Cry 6 and Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And because I spent a lot of time benchmarking graphics cards, and learning about how game engines are built, I took one look at this monitor and said to the press lady, I'm like, this is on stretched, right? Like, this game is...
have the right aspect ratio.
No. None of the Ubisoft titles support 32 by 9. They barely support 21 by 9.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they support 21 by 9. I think, and that's about it. Yeah, because that's right. Yeah, so the game has to actually support 32 by 9 for it. Otherwise, it's going to be stretched and look absolutely shocking.
Exactly right.
It's like walking to somebody's house and seeing Motion Plus on the TV and going, what the hell are you doing?
I'm pretty sure it doesn't even support 21 by 9 because I was using one of the OLED displays afterwards, and I actually sat down at that computer, and before I even touched the mouse and keyboard, I said to the lady that was like demoing, I'm like, this is not even at 3440 by 1440. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, it's not at the native resolution. That is 1080p stretched. I can see it without even pulling it up. I'm like, she's like, what are you talking about? And then I'm like, if you press escape, go to the settings, I bet you it says 1920 by 1080. And then it did. And it was 1920 by 1080 and its aspect ratio was 16 by 9. And then when you clicked on, like, you finally put it to native, it was stretched. And I said to one of the girls, I did this in front of the other press members as well, because no one said anything. And I'm like looking at these games and I'm like, this is an ultra-wide event. Why are you demoing me games on ultra-wide displays that don't support the ultra-wide aspect ratio? And I said, I'm like, I think these are stretched titles, because I'm pretty sure, to my knowledge, that Ubisoft basically makes games for 16 by 9 because they're trying to sell to consoles. No console gamers are trying to have an ultra-wide. Like, that's just like that just doesn't happen. And I said to her, I'm like, this is stretched on the sides, on each of the sides. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, well, you move my Far Cry 6 character up and there was like text on the wall, and I said, watch this. And then I moved the mouse over and then the text goes like, dude. And it was like stretching, and she's like, oh shit. Like, she verbally said shit. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure is going to be in Assassin's Creed Valhalla as well, because Ubisoft titles, they don't have a lot of settings. They've got like 5 settings. And I said to her, I'm like, just a little bit of feedback. If you're going to do an ultra-wide demo, make sure make sure the games that you're demoing natively support the aspect ratio that you're trying to show off. And I said, these displays would be fantastic in games like Forza. Oh, not Forza, like Gran Turismo 6.
Yeah, like I think Forza on PC supports like super ultra wide. You got like Spider-Man on PC that supports it, like all the Sony ports. Like I think Uncharted and Last of Us 2, yeah, they support like full ultra wide now. Like, you got to like just pick like the most immersive, like Cyberpunk, man. Like, why aren't they showing Cyberpunk?
I asked them. I asked them. I said, why are we looking at Ubisoft titles? And she said, this is a media event that we were partnered with Ubisoft, and these were the games that we could only play. And I'm like, that stinks. That sucks.
Yeah, you got to be showing the goods.
Yeah, I said, like, games like even Age of Empires 4 as well, because I'm currently testing a ultra. I mean, it is 21 by 9. It's not super ultra wide, but it still supports ultra wide. And that looks awesome on there, because it's like a top-down RTS title, and then like you've got all your units. That looks mint. That looks really good. Other than the titles that I was playing on these rigs, these displays were ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The 1000R curvature, you're wrapped around in 8K, and that pixel density, even at stretched, was mind-blowing. It was like sitting in a cockpit. Like, you were just positioned right in front of it, and all of your peripheral vision was game.
Yep.
Mind-blowing.
It's kind of, it's huge, like 57 inches, but it's kind of funny, like how, I won't say selfish, but I don't know what word to use it, because like it's really for one, right? Like, because of the curvature, and because of like your peripheral vision, and because it feels basically everything, it feels your entire sight line. It's basically a monitor for one. Like, you know, if somebody else is in the room, it's like tough luck.
Yeah.
You're going to be viewing from, it's going to look good, but it's, you know, you're not getting the premium immersion. It's like crazy. Like, you know, it's like a massive 57-inch display for one.
It is overkill. It is unnecessary. It is, I mean, there isn't a graphics card that can push its full specs on the planet right now. Like, there's no game, if you wanted to max out a game at 8K, you are not going to hit. What was that, sorry?
It have to be an older game, like maybe something like an esports title like CSGO or Overwatch or something like that, because those games run at like, you know, the 4090 can run Overwatch at like 200 FPS in 4K if you want.
Yeah, so, but this will be in 8K.
Yeah, it won't hit 240. So that's what's crazy, is like the 240 hertz refresh rate is overkill, because it's like, who's going to be running 240 hertz on that?
Yeah, I mean, They were going balls to the wall, every spec inside of this thing. Like it's an extremely expensive monitor. Like it is probably, I mean, I think it's I don't know if they had a price on it when I was there, so maybe the price is out now that it's been announced, because I caught this 6 hours before it was announced. But I'm guessing it would be over $5,000 Australian. It would have to be. Hold on, I might pull up the Samsung website here.
It's more than we're willing to spend on a display.
Oh yeah, way more. Way more. It is.
And the OLED G9 is more down to earth because it's a 1440p. I'm looking at the 49-inch. I mean, that's still gigantic.
It is. That one was really, really beautiful. I've never experienced that level of OLED before. Like the true blacks that I was seeing in that was the game that I was playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla in, and just going from like indoors to outdoors was like you've got that really bright snow landscape that was gorgeous, and then you've got the inside when you're like speaking to some NPCs in there, and just the blacks and the contrast and the color accuracy was just top notch. But there was an issue with that I found, and I mentioned it to one of the girls, and it might just be no, I don't want to say that, because I think it would be prevalent for someone that has a lot of natural light coming into their room. So if you're looking at the display, it's got this like reflective coating on it.
Yeah. Like I prefer matte displays. That's the issue with like some OLEDs, is especially using an OLED for as a gaming monitor, is that a lot of them have that sort of reflective displays that TVs do. And like when they brought reflective displays like into the TV market, I was like, I don't know about this. I mean, I love my LG OLED TV, but like, it took me a while just to get used to the fact that it's a reflective display. But I think reflective displays for like PC monitors, I think we probably would be on the same page, is that it's just you really need to have the lighting right in your wherever you are. You can't really have a light behind you or something that would be reflected in the display. You kind of it's a very room specific sort of display, especially for a PC monitor.
Yeah,
because usually
completely
you have
agree.
headlight behind you or something like that when you're using your PC, and that can be a problem when you've got a reflective display.
Yeah, I was saying to the girl, this display would be rough if you were a Twitch streamer that has all the hexagonal LEDs behind them, just to add like a little life to their shot. Because like the booth that I was sitting at, they had a LED light. It was just a really nice purple LED light, just to add a little bit of ambiance to the room. But I could see the entire light in the panel, and I'm like, oh man, this is rough. If your setup is across from the window, and then the window's light comes straight in, you are going to be struggling. Yeah, so that was my only criticism really with that monitor. But other than that, that was gorgeous.
Other technology is nuts. Like I could see it in your article. It's got like a 0.03 millisecond response time, and that's just insane, because that's basically OLED technology, or at least the cutting edge OLED technology that you see in the Samsung OLEDs and the premium LG OLEDs, is that you get a response time that in no other display technology can match.
Yeah.
It's basically like the chance of ghosting is 0%, basically. Like you're not going to see any sort of artifacting just based on fast movement or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
You can see actually in that GIF that I have in my article, you can see the reflections.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can. Like the purple lighting.
But like all of these are so curved, and if you are just listening to the audio of this, we definitely recommend checking out these articles, because then you can really see what we're trying to describe. But it's just go on. Sorry, Kosta.
I was gonna say like 57-inch, 49-inch. I just think like it's too big for like most
It's
people.
massive. It's huge. You're sitting in front of it. You're like, why? Why can't you make this like, I don't know, 37?
They offer those. Yeah, like I've got a 38-inch ultrawide, an MSI, and that's huge. But like I don't think I could do bigger than that.
Yeah, I'm currently testing MSI's 40-inch ultrawide, and that is the maximum, I think, in terms of size that I could use, because those and that's flat, that's not curved. So so this is really, really wide and not curved at all. So if you were going to go bigger than this, it needs to be curved, or you end up going like this. Like you end up turning your head to look at the other side of the screen. Yeah,
definitely.
The last display.
Would you like a free one of these?
Oh.
No room or not? I'll figure out a way.
Yeah, no. If they wanted to send me one, I'd work it out. The last display I wanted to touch on was the Odyssey Arc, and this is again an extremely 1000R curvature. It's so curved that it's almost impossible to look at. Oh, Doom Eternal just finished downloading. Fantastic. Yeah, these are so curved that you can't be sitting any other location other than directly in front of it.
Yeah, that's that thing that I was saying, like curved displays, especially ones with like a decent curve. It's almost like, I wouldn't say selfish, but it's like as they tried releasing curved TVs a while ago, if you remember. But it's just like it's so niche, like unless you're sitting directly in front of it. But yeah, like based on your image, so this is like if you were setting up like your own like cockpit type setup, like this display would be absolutely nuts for that.
Yeah, that's what I wrote in the article. Pardon me. I wrote in the article. They demoed this with Gran Turismo 6, and which was a incredible game. This was actually the only game that they had the aspect ratio native with the monitor that they were displaying it on, because it doesn't even look like it is 16:9, but it is. When you sit down in the actual chair, you realize that it is 16:9 but it looks like it's an ultra wide because it's so big and it's so curved. But once you sit down in the cockpit with your little steering wheel and all of that, it is incredible. Like driving in that game, especially in like first person, even when you've got like the camera in third person, was epic. You got 165 hertz at 4K. Everything is buttery smooth. You got 1 millisecond response time. That was awesome, but it is very case specific, as with these other monitors. Like if you only played racing games, then I would recommend you this monitor. They also had this monitor displayed in portrait mode, which was bizarre.
You can have, it's a 55-inch display. I mean, all these displays are nuts, which is awesome to see because they're just crazy.
You see that photo of it in portrait mode?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like, you can also do this with it. And I'm like, who is going to do this with it?
Just have this display to run your Discord chat.
Yeah. Like what 55 inches of doom just looming over you, 1000R curvature. Oh. Yeah, because it's so curved. If you put it in portrait, it'll look like the top is falling on top of you. I don't know what monitor arm you're going to be using for this, or
it's bendable. Like it would have been cool if they had it like a bendable version of it or something like that.
That would be wicked. A bendable would be sick. Yeah, these monitors are overkill, and I said I think in one of the articles, because I did 3 of them, Samsung has basically got monitors ready for when graphics cards catch up, like for the games that are like the big titles like the Cyberpunks and like, you know, the full RTX supported titles is like they now have 8K at 240 hertz. I don't know how far away that is. How far away do you think that is? Because
I think next year. The thing is, like, the 4090 and the 4080 are 4K 100 FPS cards.
Yeah.
With DLSS when it's needed, right? Because you can't just run every native. And DLSS is helpful at that resolution because you got more data to work with. DLSS looks better the higher you go in terms of resolution. They have like a specific mode for 8K, but yeah. But I think I think because it's ultra wide, because it's by 2160. So my 38-inch MSI is 38 by 1600. So it's 1600p. So it's essentially like a 4K display, 16 by 9 4K display, like just cut into like a 21 by 9 aspect ratio. So you got 38 by 40. So you get the same 4K horizontal resolution, but the vertical is 1600p. So I think like that is kind of like where is the maximum you can go for like an ultra wide right now. It's like, you know, it's like slightly in between 40, you know, the 1440p sort of ultra wides and like, you know, like a 21 by 60 ultra wide, which is like that 50, that crazy one we first talked about, which there aren't cards that can do that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that is.
Unless you're playing like an ancient game, really.
Yeah, you would have. It's so case specific. It's I don't know who's going to be buying these. They're probably, I can't imagine more than 1,000 of these are going to be sold worldwide. Like it's so high end. It's so. What was that? Sorry.
I think we might be surprised. Yeah, like I think like thousands will be sold for sure. Yeah.
But you reckon?
Yeah, niche. I don't know. Like, to be honest, like if there's like hundreds of thousands of 4090s out there, then there's going to be...
Maybe people just want to melt their graphics cards.
The people that are buying these crazy displays, there has to be.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose for them to fly press out and be like, look at this. And we're like, why?
Anything else, right? So like, you know, here's our flagship displays and, you know, they want to stay on the cutting edge. And they obviously are based on what we're seeing here. Yeah. But, you know, the sellers will be like the G7 or like, you know, the 34-inch ultra wides that are 1440p or the 1440p displays. You know, that's the sweet spot. And that'll be the sweet spot for the next 3 or 4 years still, I think. Yeah, I agree. I think just a limitation of ultra wide is the games, really. It's like games that don't support that aspect ratio, 21 by 9 and above, is like a real... Like, I love ultrawides. I love working on them. I love gaming on them when the game supports it natively. Oh, yeah. It's like, it's such an immersive experience, especially with a little bit of curvature, not this 1000R cockpit. I think, yeah, was it 1400R? What's like the good one? I forget. Like
1400 is decent.
Yeah, where it's like it's not too curved, because if you go too curved, then it really, like, you really have to be like at the specific spot. Yeah, then your viewing angles are all spastic. But I just can't. I can recommend them, but if you're just playing like Fortnite or like all your esports titles, and you have to make sure before you buy an ultra wide display that the games that you play regularly and your hardware matches up, because if they don't, you're gonna have a rough experience. Yeah, because you're going to be running things at a lower resolution, and so like when you have a display, like obviously like you buy it for the native resolution that you're going to be playing in. You know, there might be some titles that you run at a lower resolution here and there, but like you don't buy a 1440p display and then play games in 1080p. Yeah. I mean, ideally, anyway, you can, and you know, depending on like if you use your PC mostly for work or whatever the case is, but like ideally, like, you know, if you buy a 4K PC monitor, you're gonna have like a 4K GPU. Yeah, of course, absolutely. I think that's all I've got on Samsung's new monitors. If you haven't already, listeners and viewers, go check them out. They are balls to the wall crazy. It was an awesome experience to sit in front of them. Thank you very much,
Samsung for flying me out and allowing me to do this coverage. It was really, really impressive. It was impressive stuff. Unnecessarily, like, it's just so crazy to be sitting in front of a display like this and you're just like looking around at it like, oh my god, this is 8K over 57 inches. It's just anyway, we should move on. What should we flex into now?
I think keeping it on the Gamescom tip and talking about displays and resolutions, we should talk about AMD's new graphics cards coming out in a week's time from this recording, and this will complete the company's RDNA 3 lineup. So they're set to launch, and they have announced the AMD Radeon 7700 XT and the Radeon RX 7800 XT. So this means that, you know, with the 7900 combo and the 7600 mainstream or entry-level GPU, this fills out the mid-range. And, you know, the 7700 XT is going to launch at a US price of $449, and the 7800 XT is going to launch at a price of $499. What makes these interesting is that in terms of like the competition, so they're being positioned as competitors to NVIDIA's mid-range models. So the 7700 XT, based on AMD's presentation, will go up against the 4060 Ti, and the 7800 XT will go up against the RTX 4070, which is interesting because it is kind of confusing in a way, because if you look back at the previous RDNA 2 generation, the 6800 XT was more of a premium card, and that kind of went toe-to-toe against the 3080.
Yeah.
And now the 4080 is like, you know, priced so much higher than what the 3080 was, and now the 7800 XT is priced lower than what the 6800 XT was, and now it's going up against this 4070, which is like perfectly fine. Like, it's not to say that, hey, it should be way more powerful or whatever the case might be. It's just that these two cards are targeting the 1440p market.
Yeah.
So that's based on all their performance, and based on their performance, they look pretty good. So, like, you know, the 7800 XT, which is a 16 gig card, up against the 4070, like, it performs better in some titles, you know, lags behind in others. This is AMD's own internal data, but based on their internal data, the
that's a significant improvement with fidelity. The FSR3.
Oh, well, yeah, that's the other announcement.
Oh, sorry. Go on. No, I won't jump ahead. I'm just looking at that. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's their answer to DLSS 3. We'll get to that in a sec, because that's the other big announcement. But yeah.
Yeah.
So what was interesting is that, well, I mean, it like, according to AMD's benchmarks, the 7800 XT outperforms the 4070 by 3.5% on average, which is kind of like within the margin of error, but it just means some titles will be faster, some will be slower, but they're comparable cards. The 4070 retails for US $599, and the 7800 XT is going to retail for $499, so it's $100 cheaper and similar type of performance, or slightly faster on average. So it's a pretty aggressive move from that respect. The weird one is the 7700 XT doesn't seem as exciting, because it's $50 cheaper at $449, and their comparisons are against the 4060 Ti 16 gig, which retails for $499.
Okay.
But doesn't really, like, the difference between the 4060 Ti 16 gig seems like not really like a worthwhile purchase, because it's like for the extra 8 gig, it's like $100 extra. So the 4060 Ti is $399 with the 8 gig model, and you're not getting that much performance unless it's a VRAM heavy title. And
that's more of and correct me if I'm wrong, but 4060 Ti I would consider a higher end 1080p card.
What NVIDIA is positioning it as. So that's why this comparison is a little bit weird, because the 7700 XT as according to AMD's data, is roughly about 20% slower than the 7800 XT, but it's only like $50 cheaper. And then the 4060 Ti 8 gig is at $399, and this is $449. So it's this weird sort of like slots in the middle where it doesn't really make sense. Like the 7800 XT makes a lot of sense. $499, you know, really good 1440p performance. Does the 4070 on average, and you know, and it's cheaper, right? Whereas this one is like $50 cheaper, but you're getting 20% less performance. You're getting a whole tier less performance. If you're already spending $449, why not just spend an extra $50 and get the way better version?
Yeah, they've done like Apple charts here.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, but it is good to see, and also like AMD's positioning him as like replacements for the 2070 and the 5700 XT, like, which are old cards now, but they're obviously still high up there in the Steam charts.
It's 2 generations behind.
Provide any data comparing them to, like, you know, the 7800 compared to the 6800, or the 50 or the 7700 compared to the 6700. These numbers are going to drive me crazy. But so basically, I mean, NVIDIA does. So like when NVIDIA announced the 4060, they show that, hey, it's going to be on average 15% faster than the 3060. But you get the added benefit of DLSS 3. And with DLSS 3, you're going to get X amount of performance.
Yeah.
Here, AMD's not showing that. So the understanding is that the 7700 XT is actually not going to be all that faster than the 6700 XT, and that's likewise for the 7800 XT compared to the 6800 XT, which is, I guess, disappointing in some sense, because you're not getting this huge general uplift. You're kind of like getting like a like-for-like replacement that's like, yeah, it's better. But the thing is, like, neither of these cards are as efficient as NVIDIA offering. So if you're going to do something that's like 15 to 20% faster, but like, you know, 50% more power efficient, that's more exciting than something that's, you know, 15% faster, but almost identical in terms of specs and power usage.
Yeah. No, I agree. That is slightly disappointing. Do we have release? Are these cards out?
Yes, the 6. So we will have reviews over on Tweakdown. So definitely stay tuned. There'll be multiple cards we'll be reviewing. I can't really obviously say what. Do you
have these cards in your possession?
Maybe
not. Maybe you should go to Tweaktown on September 6th and then you see if we did have them or not.
That's cool. But then also AMD has said that this is it for the lineup. So there won't be any more RDNA 3 cards.
So are we moving on? I'm not familiar with I haven't been up to date on the new GPU technology that is coming out. Is it going to RDNA 4, or are they renaming?
Next will be RDNA 4, and the rumor with that is that AMD are not going to release a flagship model.
Oh.
So they're not going to have like an 8900 to compete with like a 5090.
What? So they're just going to go 1440p and below, or are they going to have a 4K card?
Probably, but it would just be like mid-range. So maybe they'll have like something that'll be equivalent to a 7900 XTX, but a lot cheaper and a lot more power efficient.
Wow. Okay. Why is that? Why do you think like they're deciding to not have a direct competitor to the 4090?
Well, this is all based on rumor.
Yeah.
So the rumor is, well, based on things that have leaked, is that RDNA 4 on the high end was going to be a really ambitious chiplet design.
Okay.
So RDNA 3 uses chiplets, kind of like Ryzen in the CPU space. So you have like one chip for the graphics processing, and then you have multiple memory chips to handle memory stuff. And there's like super fast interconnects between these chips.
Is that the Infinity fabric?
That's separate. I think it's called something similar to that. Yeah, that's like some sort of like the Infinity Bridge or something like that.
Yeah.
That internet or something like that.
Anyway, go on.
But I do that because you can use different nodes. So like for the 7900, you have like the 5 nanometer node for like the graphics chip. Then you have 6 nanometer for the memory chips, and then you can as the dies don't have to be as big, you can cut down on costs, you can get more yields,
Mm.
and you can actually price things more aggressively.
Okay.
So RDNA would have taken that in even further. It would have split the graphics chip into like multiple chips and then multiple memory chips, and there was some leaked diagrams showing that like it was going to be this huge complex thing. And apparently the rumor is that just like it's just not going to be ready. Like there's just no way they can do it or get it working within the time frame without blowing heaps of money, and there might not be that much of a return because flagship enthusiast models don't sell as well as mid-range models.
True.
And
Okay.
they could be just waiting for RDNA 5 to get that technology in order, or whatever the case is. But that's where that sits at the moment.
Oh. Well, that's slightly disappointing, especially if, you
It
know.
would have been exciting to see something like, some crazy design, like, that here's a new GPU style. I mean, which they kind of did with the 7900 and the 7800 and 7700 XT, these new models, have multi-chip designs just like the flagship models. So they have like a graphics compute die, and then they have memory dies around it. So which could be one of the reasons why the 7800 XT is priced at $499, is because they can afford to price it at that, compared to NVIDIA pricing the 4070 at $599. And NVIDIA's Ada Lovelace architecture using 4 nanometer is obviously super cutting edge,
Yeah.
not cheap by any stretch.
Wow.
And maybe they really afford to put the 4070 that much lower without like severely cutting into margins. So I think based on that, like the 7800 XT has every chance, depending on how it's marketed and depending on technologies like FSR 3, which was also announced, like how well that works, to become like a major, kind of like a major presence this generation, or over the next couple of years at least.
Well, I'm excited for it. I love competition, and
It breeds innovation, like it forces people to actually do shit.
it's better for the consumer as well. With the more competition on the market, the lower the prices. And yeah, through that, more innovation is emerged. Did we touch on FSR 3 or?
This is their other big announcement. And so FSR 3 is in AMD's answer to NVIDIA's DLSS 3 frame generation. Frame generation technology on NVIDIA side was this kind of like, what the hell is this announcement when they announced the 4090? Is like, wait, what's happening? This 60 FPS is going to 120. How? What? Why? Where?
Sorry?
And basically it uses specialized hardware, AI hardware in the 40 series. And it's all based on NVIDIA's AI stuff, they're the leaders in AI. And what it does is it uses AI to generate frames in between between even like upscaled frames or whatever the case is. So you have generated frames generated by AI that also uses then reflex technology to minimize the latency. So then you get this perceived performance increase with lower latency.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks and feels like you're playing the game at 150 FPS, but you're not really. The native rendering is probably happening at like 60. But then you got all this AI magic doing all this sort of stuff.
Upscaling,
And
baby.
it works across the entire 40 series. And it's become like a big selling point, right? So like DLSS 3, and like NVIDIA are pushing it, obviously, because they've obviously spent a bunch of research developing it. And so like, the 4060, the 4060 Ti, every card, it works. Like when I reviewed the 4060, like I was impressed. Like it works at 1080p and it looks really good. Like, if you want to experience like ray tracing at 100 frames per second, you can.
Yeah.
On the entry level card.
That's
so
fantastic.
The question was always, AMD, what are you going to do? Where's your response? Where's your version of this? And they announced it like a year ago, possibly just in reaction to say we are working on FSR 3.
Yeah, just a knee jerk.
Mm-hmm. And now they're ready to launch it in September, and it sounds actually pretty exciting. And based on the limited demos that they've shown to outlets at Gamescom, the general impression feedback is that it looks really good. That it looks
Yeah.
on par with DLSS 3 frame generation.
Yeah, I was about to say that from the internal images here, if you're just an audio listener, head over to the article and you can see these internal screenshots. It does look very similar to DLSS and frame generation. I don't know. I get funny about internal stuff like this because I pay attention to a lot of what Apple does, and Apple's internal benchmarks and all of that is just so poor.
It's going to be a wait and see because it sounds pretty exciting. And look, it will improve over time. But what AMD is calling it, they're calling it fluid motion frames, right? And so it's a part of their FSR package, which includes their upscaling, which is FSR2, which looks pretty good in the quality mode, but it's not on par with DLSS in its quality mode. DLSS has superior visual fidelity.
Okay.
But it's part of that package. But FSR2 works on all GPUs, right? And that's one of the big things about it. And fluid motion frames, AMD says, will work on all GPUs, which is like a kind of like you have to do a double take because like it requires a lot of specialized technology to work.
Yeah, true.
It's easier to tailor. Like if you're doing specialized technology, it's like developing for console. If you're developing for PS5 only, your game is going to look better than if you're developing it for every platform.
Yeah.
Because you can focus on that one bit of technology.
Yeah, or that one like selection of hardware that is inside of the PS5 and makes developers' lives much easier because they're not having to make a very diverse engine that can run on almost an infinite amount of combination of hardware, CPU, motherboards, graphics cards. It's like, it would be so much easier to develop a game directly for console.
Yeah, I know. That's why like PC ports, things like that, are always like a big question mark because it's just there's too many configurations, right?
Yeah.
But this is exciting because it will work. AMD recommend that you have like a 20, like a high-end 20 series or 30. They recommend like a 30 series GeForce card, like a 3070 or something to run fluid motion frames. And they, by that same token, they recommend like an RDNA 2 card, which is fair enough because you need to actually render the game at a decent frame rate for this fluid motion frame stuff to actually work properly.
Yeah, okay.
But it's going to work. And initially, it's going to be game specific. So the first couple of games are Forspoken and Immortals of Avium, which is kind of like it's a new Unreal 5 game. Not the biggest games in the world, but it's good that it's coming to 2 titles in September, which is weeks away. But where it gets a little confusing is that it needs to use like on Radeon cards, it'll use this new technology called anti-lag plus, which I think is similar to NVIDIA's Reflex technology, and that's so you can lower the latency.
Right.
The problem with fluid motion frames or like frame generation without a latency reduction technology is that your latency increases. Like you're not like you're playing the game at 150 FPS, but it feels like you're playing it at 30 because there's input lag, right?
Yeah,
and it's noticeable. So Reflex dramatically reduces that, and it makes it feel smooth. So like Cyberpunk with DLSS 3 is actually very, very playable on all 40 series cards, and it feels decent. Like it's not like you wouldn't put it in. You wouldn't have CS:GO or Valorant or Apex Legends with frame generation because it's going to increase the latency. And if you don't increase latency in those types of games because that's
that's the opposite of what you want.
Exactly. So the interesting thing is that anti-lag plus, they've said that it'll work better on Radeon products that support anti-lag plus. So it could be inferior on a GeForce card, which is fair enough.
Okay.
So that I think that's the question mark is like how well is it going to run on all the cards?
You might have to do some testing on this when it comes out.
Definitely. Hopefully we get access to it ahead of launch, because it'll be interesting to see it running on the new AMD GPUs and as well as how it runs on GeForce GPUs, because that's exciting. Like the fact that it runs on both
Yeah.
means that you know, and it's going to be open source and free for developers to implement.
Okay.
The other exciting bit for it that they say is coming soon is that AMD are launching this thing called Hyper RX, and it's basically on their drivers. So if you've got a Radeon card, there's going to be this mode called Hyper RX where you just enable it in the driver, so in your Radeon Adrenalin software, and you basically turn on FSR. It's not FSR2, I think it's the original FSR, so I don't know whether you would want that anyway. But basically you can turn on that upscaling, and you can turn on anti-lag technology, and then you can actually turn on this fluid motion frames in the driver. So it basically means that any DirectX 11 or 12 game that you load up will have it enabled by default because it's enabled on the driver level.
Right.
Which means that hundreds of games
Yeah.
that could potentially see their frame rate go from like 60, 70 to like 180 just instantly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's right. So that sounds like amazing, right? But like, it's just the question mark is like, is it going to look good enough? And is it going to work as well as, you know, it's going to be like seamless across all titles with upscaling and things like that. And, you know, they've said that they've focused on quality. They've said that like they've made updates on how it all works on the back end for latency reduction. They got a whole new system for that. They got, you know, the image scaling, and then there's a mode where it's like, you know, you can have they showed FSR3 with native anti-aliasing. So it means that you just run AMD fluid motion frames to boost performance, so you don't have to upscale or use their FSR. So then you get like this massive boost of performance, latency reduction, which is going to be exciting because that'll work on all GPUs as well. So like it is a exciting bit of tech. Like there hasn't been like a deep dive by any publication, you know, like Gamers Nexus or something like that, like going into showing you how it works, showing you the difference between this frame and that frame and what the AI generated frame looks like. But AMD are saying all the right things. Like, you know, they've got this special thing to render the UI so it's separate from the game itself.
Oh.
Because frame generation at launch had an issue where UI elements could kind of become a bit smudgy because the AI was having trouble generating UI element overlays. Whereas AMD obviously saw that and going, well, let's separate the UI. Let's figure out a way to render the UI separate from the actual in-game frame. So it's exciting technology, and it's good to see that they're finally coming out with it. And you know, and it actually could be supported on consoles like the PS5 and Xbox Series X too. So being able to get actual, you know, 4K TVs that can generate 120 FPS, actually using that now.
That would be epic.
Yeah.
That would be very epic. Man, GPU technology is all of these little, like, well, I suppose they're not little anymore, but all of these technologies are just like giving more performance, more, and sometimes there is a cost of quality to the image, but I think most gamers, especially the ones that prefer like first-person titles and stuff like that, and they don't mind a little hit to their quality of their image, will be turning these things on.
Yeah, I think like cinematic, like action adventure games, like it's a given. It's like, why wouldn't you turn it on?
Exactly. Yeah.
The only downside to this announcement for FSR3 for me is that it's not going to be available in Starfield for some reason.
Yeah.
Like you'd think because AMD are bringing FSR2 to Starfield and they're the technology partner, and it would have been cool if they just, that would have been like a mic drop to say, hey, it's going to be available in Starfield to boost performance even further. But not only that, it's going to be available in the Xbox version, and so that it's going to render at like, you know, 60 FPS plus on Xbox now because of fluid motion frames.
Yeah. That would be awesome. Maybe they're waiting for it to come out, or maybe they'll just surprise announce it.
maybe, but I think Gamescom would have been the place to do that.
Yeah, true. Gamescom would have been the spot to do that. Should we move on to another topic? Maybe we'll just do a couple more. We'll touch on Linus, and then we'll finish off with Spotify, because we have been going for a while now.
Yeah, these games were huge.
Yeah, the Gamescom, it's worth diving into. So if you haven't by now, Linus Tech Tips, have they posted anything?
Yeah, so the latest video from Linus. So I think, this saga's been going on for a few weeks, and obviously a lot of people are throwing their 2 cents in. And we're not here to pass judgment or anything like that. But I think it's important because it comes down to integrity in the content that you're producing.
Yeah.
Right. So the whole issue is that Linus Tech Tips, an expose video or something, or a deep dive by Gamers Nexus, showcased a whole ton of discrepancies in their CPU coverage, in their cooler coverage, in their GPU coverage, things that should have been picked up, like performance results that are just so out of whack that they should have been picked up by a second pair of eyes, or whatever the case is. And then there was like this other saga about Linus Tech Tips doing like a feature on like this cooler and essentially what looked like gaslighting the developer or the hardware makers, and then selling it off for charity or whatever the case was, and a miscommunication thing, or we don't know the full story there really, because it's two sides saying two different things.
Yeah.
It didn't look good because they didn't handle it well. And then after the expose video came out, their initial response was a gut reaction, and then they did an official apology video that it was all their heads of departments, talking heads, that was a little bit tone deaf because it was jovial.
Yeah, and they also ran an ad.
Yeah, and they monetized the video, which then they took off. And then they stopped video production for a week. And this is all like major because they're one of the biggest YouTube channels. They are the biggest tech channel. Well, they're one of the biggest YouTube channels just in general, right? I mean, each video garners millions of views. And they're a trusted source for a lot of people when it comes to reviews. So they go, if a GPU comes out, they'll, a lot of people will say, okay, let me check out the Linus Tech Tips review.
Yeah, and then they make their purchasing decision based on what he is saying, because he is such a industry figure in the technology space that his word can, I don't know if it's going to shift like stock value, but it could certainly impact it. And I mean, if you were to aggregate all of Linus's channels, like Short Circuit, the WAN Show, and all of these separate channels, and his main channel, the LTT channel, he blows every single other technology focused reviewing news channel out of the water by far. Yeah.
So even like Gamers Nexus, right, which is extremely well respected by us, by peers, by the community, by everyone, for the purely like in-depth investigative reporting that they do,
as well, very objective.
Pretty objective, and how they approach their reviews of hardware, which isn't the case to say that everybody needs to be like Gamers Nexus, but like they have a unique approach because they go into a very structured and clinical breakdown of technology.
Yeah, it's rigorous.
It's rigorous, and so you can see why if they're focused on that sort of stuff, if they see all these discrepancies, why they would call it out. And it's not that they, like, that's probably the wrong word to use. Like, it's not like they said it wasn't a gotcha video. They didn't monetize their video. They just did a purely objective look at Linus Tech Tips and their recent review history. And it was just like, hit after hit of them just saying, this isn't another example. Here's another example. Here's another example. And, if we came across this sort of error, this is what we would done. They haven't done, et cetera, et cetera. And so I guess where it stands now is that Linus Sebastian, who's the face of Linus Tech Tips, posted a new video a few days ago now, basically being pretty, I would say, emotional, but also just straightforward in terms of this is their plan going forward.
I haven't seen this video.
It's pretty good. You should watch it.
Yeah.
It's all about transparency. Like, we're going to disclose all of our testing methodology. We're going to engage with the community. We're going to provide testing results. We're going to engage, if people want to be involved in going through our data, we're going to invite them to do that. It's optional. And we're going to have a new tier of like, if we make a mistake, and we're going to make mistakes, because everybody makes a mistake.
Of course.
Right? We're only human. But they've got like a tiered sort of thing where, if the mistake is X, we will post a pinned comment to say that this is an error, this is what it should say. If the mistake is like bigger than that, then we will, I think, do something beyond that. I can't remember what. And then if it's like a X amount of mistake, we will take the video down and then re-upload it.
Okay.
And you reshoot that entire video. Or I think there's a version where they reshoot a segment, and there's a version where they will reshoot the entire video as well, like depending on the error and stuff like that.
So it's a bit of an accountability kind of, like, here's how because like you were saying, there will be mistakes. It's not about the mistakes, it's how you recognize that they are mistakes. And especially when you are the size of Linus Media Group, which is all of the channels.
Yeah.
When you're this big, there is a certain level of responsibility that you have. I don't know how you quantify that, but as we were saying before, his voice is massive in the industry, and with that massive voice comes with responsibility. It's like the Spider-Man thing: with great power comes great responsibility. So when a mistake is it's called out, or something flew under the radar from their internal side, and then Steve or Hardware Unboxed or someone else notices a mistake, and then that becomes more and more prevalent. It's about how they recognize that and how they're going to go forward.
Yeah, I think one area of the video that you'd find super interesting too is because like when this all broke out, there was like ex-employees saying that how it's not a great place to work, right?
Oh yeah.
And then on the extreme level, there was sexual harassment and
allegations
and things like that to that effect that painted a pretty negative image of LMG and working there.
Yeah, it seemed very like a toxic work environment that was very centered. Again, this is all from former LTT staff and our allegations, though this hasn't been confirmed in any way. But these former staff members said that it was a work environment that prioritized getting out these videos, and this is something that they touched on Steve touched on in his Gamers Nexus.
About quantity.
Yeah, it really came down to pushing out as many videos as possible, staying on schedule, and they didn't have a lot of time to do reshooting. They didn't have a lot of time to do retesting, and yeah, essentially it was a workspace that was prioritizing the bottom line over the quality of the product that they were producing.
Yeah, and this new video touches on Linus goes like, if a video isn't ready, we're not going to push it out. So like if whoever's because they've got a huge team, whoever's making a video, whoever's in charge of it, if they say like, no, this is not going to be ready on time because it's not up to the quality standard, or we need more time, then it just won't be posted.
Good.
So they're not going to be beholden to a schedule. But where it gets super interesting, I guess like almost pedantic, or just to me a little bit weird, is that without directly responding to, he does mention that like, we're not a sweatshop that produces content, that's it. And to prove that is where it was a little bit weird. He's like, put on camera, here's security cam footage of our car park, and here's like the cars coming in at like 8:30, and his car's leaving at 5:30, and this car is like clean as they come in after work, and these cars are still here because they're playing tabletop RPG, blah blah blah. Here's Is what our Christmas parties look like. We give away prizes at our Christmas parties from this to this, thousands of dollars of prizes.
That's weird.
It's just like bizarre. And then he goes into we did a recent survey for their employees for basically how is it to work here, those standard employment surveys. And our score was X amount, and it's way higher than the median for a place to work in Canada. And he just rattled through like all these like data-driven. Well, not even data-driven. I just think it's just bizarre to show.
It's like we're human as well. Yeah.
I can understand why, but it's kind of like okay, like I don't need to see that.
It's kind of like to me. I haven't seen the video, but all that sounds like damage control.
Yeah,
like they were like, all these allegations came out from the former staff members about the toxic work environment, and then he posts in a video, look, we have Christmas parties, the staff here have fun, like that's what it sounds like. It's like
what it was, which I just was like, okay, like it's neither here nor there for me. Like I don't need to hear that because it's kind of like whatever.
Yeah, we don't care. Just make good videos, bro. That's it.
Some people say overtime. It's like, yeah, we know it. It's like it's the tech industry. Like this is not the issue. Isn't like whether people do overtime. It was like you're working. Like it was like the sweatshop doesn't mean that people are there 14 hours a day every day. Because it's not how. It's not like sweatshop. Sweatshop is just like a term used to describe like a content farm, right?
Yeah.
So you clock in at 8:30, but then you're working, you're working 8 hours like super hard just to meet your deadlines, right? And you might leave at 5:30. And so it's irrelevant if your car is there at 8:30 and then it's not there at 5:32. The whole point is that when you're there, you're
under the pump.
Yeah, so it doesn't address the concern of like you have to meet X your quota or whatever. It's just a bit of fluff that doesn't really mean anything. So that was the weird part for me, was just showing that it's like, it doesn't mean shit really.
No, that's so Linus though. It's so Linus. So do we have anything else? That's just the update from the latest LMG controversy.
I mean, our opinion is that like my opinion anyway is like I don't see them go anywhere, but I think it's good that they're going to put more care and attention into their videos, and they're going to be transparent about their testing processes, and engage with the community more in that regard and how they do stuff. All good.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you on that. I love when people hold themselves to a higher standard, especially if they're in a position of extreme responsibility. Because with the audience, like I was saying before, with the audience that he has, he needs to be holding himself to this standard. And it is props to channels like Gamers Nexus and Hardware Unboxed and everyone else that has essentially, I don't know if this word is charged now, but like called him out and forced his hand to hold himself to a higher standard. And now that he's publicly said that he's going to implement accountability and prioritize the quality of his videos over how many he can get out, it's good to see. Everyone loves a comeback story. I never thought that Linus was going to go anywhere. I didn't think this was like the end of LMG or the LTT channel. He's too big to fail at this point, unless there was something absolutely catastrophic that came out. But this was more so this is more so like shoddy testing processes, and I'm just going to disregard the allegations from the former staff at this time, because they are allegations, they aren't confirmed.
And they probably can't say stuff because it's like, because you're a company that big, right? If there's allegations to that nature, you can't make definitive statements about specific employees or work conditions, like that can be like used against you, or like there's all this sort of legal stuff. So that's why like it's so generic, and like it's saying like here's how our rating and here's this and that, and it's like it's all well and good. Like it all sounds like a good place to work, and I'm sure it is for most of the people, because it goes into like staff retention and it's pretty high and things like that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, yeah, I think it's like being called out for sloppiness because you're generating so much content and it's all over the shop in terms of quality. And then responding in this way is a good thing, especially because this latest video is, he gets emotional or invested, and that's kind of like the reason why a lot of people love the Linus Tech Tips channel is because, you feel like you're getting him.
Yeah.
Like when he's not like, you're feeling like you're getting a raw version of it. Like whatever he says, it's like feels like it's coming from him, that it's not some scripted thing. And this video comes across, even though obviously scripted and planned out and, well shot and professional looking, it feels the most
human
open and
it
raw
feels human
of the responses so far, which is good.
I'll have to check it out. We should quickly actually we should just wrap it up here. I don't think we should go into the Spotify. It's just a small story anyway. But
I think as so much Gamescom stuff and tech and displays, and it's a packed episode.
It is jam-packed. If you didn't get a nosebleed from all of that tech talk, you should. No, thank you very much for listening. This is the very first episode of the TT show. Your hosts, I've been Jak and Kosta. We will be back every week to discuss the latest happenings in the news space, technology, products, you can name it. If it's on, everything that we're going to be discussing should be on tweetown.com. And as I said at the top of the show, all of the stories that we discuss will be in the description below. Do you have anything else to sign this first episode off, my friend?
No. Hope you enjoyed it. If there's any feedback, shoot it through. If there's any questions or anything like that, we will start engaging in that respect. Yeah. There's more.
Cool.
More next week.
Okay. Thank you very much for listening. Bye, guys. We'll see you next week.